back to another episode of the Cables to Clouds monthly news update. My name is Chris Miles. I'll be your co-host today, and I'm very happy to be back. My co-host here, Tim McConaughey, as always. I was out last time they did this, and we brought in a ringer, a powerhouse, Steve McNutt, to fill in for me. So I have some big shoes to fill this week. But so if you're not familiar with this format of the show, basically we do this once a month where we kind of go over the recent news that has come out in the last month and give our synopsis as well as hot takes or very lukewarm opinions about them. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and hop in. So 2 weeks ago, we had kind of just on the heels of a major AWS outage that happened last month. Cloudflare was, I don't know if that was, we would call it a hold my beer moment or what, but a couple of weeks ago, they had a similar issue where they were, Cloudflare, if you're not familiar with Cloudflare, they basically provide front-end security for probably majority of the websites out there on the internet. So a lot of the articles that came out about this outage were kind of explaining what Cloudflare was. If you look at the one from like The Guardian or something like that, it was more so explaining who Cloudflare was a company and why they took out all of your internet connectivity. Because there was a lot of consumer things affected by this, like X and OpenAI, Canva, etc. So this was obviously a very widespread thing. Now, we've included some articles in the news breakdown that you can see in the show notes, but it looks like they've done a kind of post-mortem report about the outage and showed what caused it, and it was actually quite interesting. So I wanted to get into kind of some of the details of that. So, Cloudflare posted this. Like I said, this breakdown of what happened, and they kind of talk about how the way traffic is ingested into their network through kind of predefined points, very predictable from their perspective, and then they do all this processing on kind of the security features that they offer on top of that, and then eventually the services are delivered to the end kind of customer hosted resource, whether that be in a cloud provider, on the internet, what have you. And apparently what had happened was there was a change to a ClickHouse database on their end. So just a very kind of a minor change that they made to this database. But the thing was, this database was responsible for generating a file that was used by their bot management system. So the bot management system is basically a set of criteria that is inspected on every request that goes through Cloudflare, so that they can use that to determine whether or not the request was generated by a human or an automated thing, a bot, potentially a botnet, kind of DDoS style attack, things like that. So that configuration file is basically used by the bot management system. Apparently, a very simple error happened where there was some duplicate rows in that database, which generated the file, causing the file to be basically twice the size that it normally is. And the software that the bot management system used was predefined to look for a certain size of file, and that file being double the size caused tons of internal server errors to be generated back from the HTTP request. So kind of an interesting one, but it was cool to read through that, and I think they did a good synopsis of it. But so if you want to see the breakdown, that's in the show notes. And Tim, were you affected by this? Did you lose millions in this?
Millions, yes, that's true. Every minute I was down, I was losing another $1 million. I only have the one website, and it's served out of CloudFront, in AWS. So what it means is that when AWS has an outage, I'm sure my website will go down. But this time, not so much. Cloudflare has been around forever, right? They're a CDN, which gives them point of presence and also the giant pipes required to provide this service as well, right? Like there's not a lot of providers out there that can do this. But yeah, I mean, it's essentially an anti-DDoS or a security front end service, and that means that when a request comes into the website, it goes to that. It gets scrubbed more or less through Cloudflare, and then forwarded on if it's legitimate. So, what's interesting about this, I think, is first of all, just I mean, I'm not surprised that it was very, very wide. Like it affected a lot of websites. There's not that many, like I said, there's not that many providers out here that offer this service, right? So if you're of a certain size and you have a certain, amount of expectation of DDoS or whatever you'd call it, or hackers coming in or whatever, you don't have a lot of options, right? So no surprise there. I do think it's interesting that, as usual, it ends up being some form of automation and some kind of configuration file that breaks everything. So this is very normal, right? Obviously, you're not going to have a person editing this file anyway. So I am curious. They gave us the root cause, which is good. I would love to know, since this is an automated system, like what is the new process they're putting in place to verify or change, or like are they gonna make it so the software from now on doesn't care about the size of the config file? Are they gonna do a validation step as part of CI/CD to, you know what I mean? Like that's always and they almost never tell you what it is, of course, for obvious reasons. But I'm curious to see what they do to fix it, like what they did to fix it, and then what is the process moving forward. So yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, I would imagine they're probably gonna. If it's something as simple as the configuration file being too big from a size perspective, I imagine they're probably going to put in something to just either expand that or maybe not leave that as hard coded in the software. Right. I included a piece in here about this from Network World, and they do make a good call out in there about how many of these outages that we've seen lately that have been kind of self-inflicted gunshots, right? By things like this, like automation, internal stuff, as opposed to general, or genuine, I should say, cyber attacks, right? It's funny because we see all these things happen, and the first thing is like, oh, is this a cyber attack? Is Cloudflare getting attacked? Is AWS, is so-and-so vendor getting attacked? It seems like over the last year, 99% of the time that has not been the case. It's been some type of automation, some type of user error, what have you. So maybe cyber attacks are over. Maybe we fixed it. They're not happening, right?
Right.
Just kidding.
Well, if they'd been using Cloudflare to stop their cyber attack. Oh, no, absolutely true. Okay, so moving on. This next one, I would not have had this on my 2025 bingo card, but probably eventually this is just going to be something that people are going to, that providers are going to do, which is funny because I remember when I worked for, a multi-cloud networking company, one of the biggest things we would always tell our customers is, hey, don't, the CSPs are never going to solve this problem for you of connecting clouds together. And then you had Oracle doing backend connectivity to Azure, right? Recently. Well, not recently. That's been like a year now or more. And now AWS and Google Cloud just announced that they're collaborating on a multi-cloud networking solution. So the solution looks pretty much like anybody who understands hybrid cloud networking would expect it to look, which is that both providers are providing a workflow, a service, if you will, that is going to use predefined meet me points for using Google Cloud Interconnect or like AWS Direct Connect. And these are just going to be, pre-provisioned racks in meet me points, like Equinix Data Center or Digital Realty or whatever, wherever those services are currently offered, they're just going to pre-build cross connects. Like imagine you put in the LOA, the letter of authorization to a data center to connect racks together like you would do in a managed provider. Well, they just did this essentially on their own. And so now they're offering this as a preview in certain AWS regions or Google Cloud regions as just essentially probably just to test the water and see what's the uptake? Are people interested in doing this? So there's a little bit of a chicken and egg here because it seems pretty basic, but also like a service, right? So I think they're putting out the minimum service required on both sides, and they're just kind of testing the waters and see if people want to use a managed service from the CSP directly to connect clouds together, right? Because I mean, right now you could do this with any multi-cloud networking, or you can do this with, Megaport and Equinix both have a healthy business, right in this space, connecting clouds together with private circuits. So I think it's a cool offer. I think we're going to see more of it over time, especially if it gets adopted. I really think this is like a little bit more than a toe in the water, but not much more than a basic, let's throw it out there and see what people if people go for it. But yeah, I mean, it's a really good suggestion. It's going to help. It's going to help true multi-cloud applications, I think, or at least I don't know if it'll help them more than multi-cloud networking would before, but more like it'll help enterprises consider it probably a little bit more, because it's kind of a vetted, stamped, seal of approval solution. So I don't know, Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you in that I think this is probably a bit of a toe in the water. But the thing is, I think it was probably relatively low effort to develop something like this. I mean, I think there are some, I guess, writings on the wall about why AWS is doing this with Google and probably not Azure, because the number one cloud provider probably not going to pair up with number two, but hey, number three, we'll go number three for that. But nonetheless, like you said, this is like, I've seen customers in the wild that actually built this exact thing themselves, right? A friend of mine was kind of telling me about it. Like, he ordered a direct connect into this facility and then ordered a cloud interconnect from Google into the same facility, and then basically paid the colo provider to run the cable between the meet me room between the two, right? So this back-to-back thing already exists in certain scenarios where customers are building this. So it makes sense that they just say, hey, let's reach an agreement in these few data centers. We'll build some interconnects between our devices. We'll build a couple simple APIs to allow for some automation to bring up a peering. It seems relatively low effort for potentially easing their customers' processes at the end of the day. So I think that's good. One thing I can't seem to find too much of about this is pricing. It's obvious that it does ride on top of, AWS typically uses the concept of the building blocks, right? So everything is kind of built upon something else. A lot of services rely on something like Private Link. This is a service that they're offering that relies on Direct Connect, right? So you always terminate this on a Direct Connect gateway. But yeah, I can't tell if this is going to alleviate some of the pricing or potentially increase some of the pricing, because it's, technically a service that they're offering. So I don't know if this is going to make Direct Connect prices higher than they normally would be in this scenario or not. And I don't see a lot of details in the routing at this point as well.
Yeah.
Like, obviously customers of this scale that are doing things like this sometimes have very complex routing policies. So it's kind of hard to tell what capabilities they'll have here, whether or not this needs to be like a static connection, or if it'll be, using something like BGP under the hood to exchange between the two clouds. But like you said, this is still early days, so maybe that stuff is yet to come. But yeah, interesting offering. I too, for the longest time, was saying that the CSPs will never do this because they're not operating in your best interest. But our bingo cards are busted this year, I guess. So that's fine.
Still a month to go too.
All right, next up, we have an announcement that came in on the 10th of November from Megaport. So Megaport, if you're familiar, network as a service provider, we've had Alexis on the show, who's kind of a tech evangelist for them. But Megaport, who is focuses on very robust and reliable network connectivity between geographic locations, and making that very simple, is now acquiring a new company called Latitude SH, which is focused on compute as a service. So this is very interesting. I'll say in my day-to-day, in my day job, I have seen a lot of advancement from Megaport in them changing what they're offering. From things like I've seen them potentially getting into the managed services game, things like that. But this is kind of takes it to a whole new level, right? Because now if we look at this from a broader scope, Latitude SH, from what I can tell about them based on their, what's in this announcement article versus what's on their website, it's, they do offer compute as a service, but it seems like there's a very strong emphasis on one, bare metal, and two, GPU as a service, right? So typically, offering compute as a service, you can kind of say the cloud providers do this as well with something like EC2, virtual machines, et cetera. Yeah. But typically you have to pay extra for the option for bare metal, because obviously that removes the kind of complexities of the hypervisor sitting in between you and the actual compute. So if this is the offering that Megaport can provide, then, they could potentially eat some of the CSP's lunch with this offering, right? Because I've seen a lot of customers use them for things like connectivity out to the internet versus doing it in the cloud provider, because obviously the cloud providers charge you per gigabyte as you go out, whereas typically Megaport does not do that. So we've seen that be a very strategic thing for customers. So now you could start potentially putting the compute there as well, more than just like virtualized network appliances like they do with their Megaport Virtual Edge platform. So I think this is a quite an interesting move from Megaport. Didn't see this coming. I knew they were wanting to, like I said, change their game up a bit, but this could be something. So I don't know. How do you feel, Tim?
Yeah. So honestly, when I read it, the first thing I was thinking of was Equinix Metal, because Equinix has been offering bare metal for several years now, three plus, or at least I don't remember how many years now. So I was thinking, okay, great, makes perfect sense for Megaport to do the same, essentially, and also, Megaport has their Megaport marketplace where they connect you to third-party services and whatnot. I don't know if I don't remember. Honestly, I didn't look it up. I don't know if they had a partnership like that, a marketplace offer with Latitude before they acquired them or not. I don't know that would have even played a part in whether or not they acquired them. I do think it's a good move on Megaport's part, right? Megaport basically has, up until now, offered connectivity as a service to whatever, those third-party marketplaces, the clouds, other Megaport facilities, or other facilities that have Megaport in them, I should say. So this is literally just tacking more services onto that connectivity. So my point is it's a good fit, right? Like compute plus network has always been very tightly coupled. And so it makes perfect sense for them to do this. Acquisition wise, I don't know. I don't know enough about Latitude service to say whether they should have acquired them or partnering. I'm going to trust Michael Reed on that one. The GPU as a service thing is a very good point, right? It's not Neo Cloud, like the GPU thing they're offering. It's not like a Neo Cloud thing that they're offering, but they're offering compute as a service plus GPU as a service, combined. So it makes sense. Yeah, I think you nailed it when you pointed out that the CSPs often, provide a high level of abstraction, but also automation in front of it. So the question now is going to be, how does Megaport fold in this offer into its automated offering, like solution, essentially? How do I go as a Megaport customer? Am I going to go to the Megaport website and can I orchestrate my compute as a service? And I'm sure the answer today is probably not yet, but I'd like to know the vision, how they're planning on integrating that. And I'm sure it's something like that, right? So no, this is good. It's really good.
Totally, I agree. It's got to fit into that automation ecosystem, right? Because that's what the CSPs have kind of excelled at for a while. So if this is going to participate in that space, it's got to fit in, right? So that is a good point.
Yeah. All right, so I was looking around and I found this one, and I'll be honest, this one completely this story completely slipped under my radar. I only found it when I went to go look to see the stuff I might have missed over the last month. So this was So this barely scrapes in, honestly. So a new feature has been added to collaboration, to Webex collaboration, or will soon actually be added to the Webex collaboration platform from Cisco. And the collaboration is from a new cybersecurity company, or a cybersecurity company called Pindrop, which is a collaboration cybersec company. I didn't know those existed, by the way. There's a new collaboration plan to bring their... Pindrop has an authentication, fraud detection, and deepfake detection for collaboration platforms. That's what they do. So this is already kind of like, I was like, man, this barely skates in, but at the same time, what a cool idea. Because several times now on, Cables to Clouds, we've reported several honestly kind of funny stories where, deepfake hackers have gained access to systems by interviewing for jobs and then getting the job, and via some interview platform where it was obviously not, it was a North Korean hacker or somebody. It was somebody else, right, that was doing the interview, or that ended up doing the interview and getting through it. So this is kind of interesting. Now it's being, like I said, it's being integrated with Cisco Webex, and I just really love the idea of doing deepfake detection and fraud detection as part of your collaboration platform, because by now everybody's seen probably those videos where somebody's in a video interview, and the person and they're like, I think you're like masking something, move your hand or something, like in front of your face and all that, right? So this is literally what that's setting out to deal with. So the article mentions that the capabilities will be available through the customer contact center, so that companies can better safeguard customers' employee and reputations. And this is specifically to combat AI attacks, if you will, or deepfakes, right? Deepfake type of attacks. So this is the first product I've seen that is targeting that specific, I guess, attack vector, like the AI attack vector. So we're going to need to see a lot more AI security products, I think, or we're going to see, I think, more AI security products moving forward, targeting specific stuff like this. So pretty cool article, actually.
Yeah, not a ton for me to add here. I'll say that I'm totally in agreement with you that these, first of all, this type of security needs to exist. So I'm glad to see it kind of coming into the forefront. And then it needs to be directly integrated with the platforms that people use, right? These companies need to be able to meet people where they are, right? Because as much as we may do it in anger, we all use Teams, we all use Webex, we all use Google Meet, whatever, and we're not going to switch to a new collaboration platform just because it has this feature, right? This needs to be built in from day one. So glad to see this coming into the fold. I am not interesting. I am interested.
The most interesting man in the world right here.
I am interested to see what happens when these things get it wrong, because as we know, AI gets a lot of things wrong. So if we have something that like what if something happens in either with the processing on the software, or maybe I just look relatively shitty that day and I get flagged as being a deep fake. And then I assume alerts are going off on the other end. What does that mean? Are they just not going to trust anything that I say? And what's the fallout from that? Do you get pinged by HR after that, or what? I don't know what I don't think we've determined what the triage process is afterward, but I'd be interested to see what that looks like.
Or you'll get tagged because your background doesn't look real and you're on a beach in the Caribbean or something.
Yeah, exactly.
That'd be cool.
Exactly. All right. Last article that we have here. So it has been announced this is just a little over a week ago. The founders of Apstra. So if you're familiar with Apstra is now, I believe, owned by Juniper, which I guess now is owned by HPE. Is a data center automation platform, open source. If you've talked to someone that uses Apstra, they're probably pretty fond of it. I've heard a lot of people say really good things about Apstra in their day-to-day. But the previous founders of Apstra have now joined together to launch a company called Aria or Aria. I'm not ARIA. I'm not sure how they pronounce it just yet. And their focus is on tackling AI networking performance. So if you kind of look at the way they talk about this, they mentioned that networks that are built for AI operate at a very different level than your standard networks do, right? There's a lot of very strict requirements. And they specifically call out that, a lot of these Broadcom chips that would be in use in these kind of high performance networks provide a ton of like microsecond telemetry about the networks, and the networks need to be able to react based on that telemetry. So it looks like that is the overall goal of this company, is to be able to kind of act as that platform that reacts to the telemetry that's pouring out from those chipsets, and make decisions that impact the AI operations, right? So just looking at their website, it looks like they're focusing on tackling suboptimal GPU performance, vendor lock-in, over-tuning, and time to revenue. So like initially, I mean, we've had people on the show to talk about these types of networks, right? We've had Peter Jones on from Cisco to talk about this stuff, and this is definitely a real thing. People are designing these things. I do think this is pretty niche, though. However, I think we've entered into the realm where we've discovered how many companies will actually be doing inference and training on LLMs and things like that. So I don't know how widely. I mean, they're probably going to be after the big end of town, right? It's got to be large customers that are doing this, maybe even hyperscalers, maybe even very, very large vendors. So I think this is a pretty niche product, but I got to admit, I don't quite understand it just yet, just based on the complexity. And we're very much dealing with usually milliseconds in networking, not microseconds. So there's a lot to lose here, especially from the points of GPUs being bought and idling, et cetera. So it's about extracting the maximum capacity from the network at any given time. So interesting. I'll be keen to see where it goes. What about you, Tim? What's your expert opinion?
Well, so on AI networking, I still would not consider myself in any way an expert. I do. They mentioned something as part of I have multiple thoughts, but they point out specifically that while the company is targeting telemetry of the backend Ethernet network that connects the GPUs together. So they're saying basically your network has to be optimized or your GPUs won't work at full efficiency. And I'm all for AI efficiency because God knows those things suck dry like so much power and empty rivers and all this other stuff. I don't know if targeting the network directly is the answer, but it's certainly part of the answer. It's got to be part of the answer. I mean, assuming that bottlenecks and whatnot are something that's keeping GPUs from being able to essentially do inference, process, deliver the results to the, wherever it needs to go. It does mention here they're building it with merchant silicon from Broadcom and using the open source Sonic network operating system. So I don't know enough about that, about the Sonic network operating system to say, is there, to say, hey, you picked this for a reason? Or if this was, we're talking about something that where we're measuring things in microseconds. Like it points out that the hyperscalers are doing it, which they are with the enhanced networking. But I don't know enough about Sonic to say like, oh, that's great. I'm glad they picked that because that's a great choice. Or, hey, it's not going to be fast enough. Because if you think about it, if you're really going to make this useful, if you're going to be trying to harvest telemetry, get it together, and then do something. I don't know. That's the other thing. There's a giant fluffy cloud on the do something part, because if I'm having, I don't know, microseconds of latency in rack 5 of my 10 GPUs or whatever, however this is organized, how do I detect that and then take an action that will do something? And what is the action I will take in the amount of time that it will do something meaningful, right? Because a lot of the stuff is like, I'm not an expert on this, but my understanding is a lot of this is microburst type networking, right? Which has been a bane of our existence since, you could find data that can move that fast, essentially, or you can find applications that could send data that fast. And microbursting has always been hard to catch, and it's always been extremely hard to correct for, because by the time you've detected it, it's over, right? You've moved on, and you don't have whatever corrective action you were going to take is worthless at that point, because it's gone. So that's to me, that's the main one, right? My understanding is a lot of this inference and data transfer that's happening with these GPUs is microbursting, or just spending a ton of data all at once, and then essentially not falling silent, but like back down to normal version, whatever. So that's the other question I have, right? And this just says, hey, there's a problem, we're trying to solve it, and here's what we think we need to do to solve it. It does mention probabilistic AI-driven methods for telemetry action, meaning we're training the AI. We either have trained or are training some kind of machine learning or AI, whatever you want to call it, to recognize this problem quickly enough to do something about it, and just kind of like glaze over and do something, just do something quickly enough based on pattern recognition, if you will, to try to cut through. Will it work? I don't know. We're in like, I don't know. So I am interested to see.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of speaking on that just kind of brought something to my mind, and I'll be honest, I don't even know if this is kind of a focus of this company at all, but it's just something that kind of popped into my head. I really feel for potentially the operators of networks like this that need to be providing this kind of stuff, because the reason I say that is with the rise of the GPUs, I think even more than seeing kind of conversations around GPUs, we're seeing a lot of options for GPU as a service, right? So obviously if companies go that route, then they're going to have customers paying them for a service, and they're depending on the size of the customer, they could be held to a very strict uptime, or basically just need to be able to account for every little thing. Exactly. So I have, a good friend of mine used to work for a major ISP in the US, and they did a lot of cell backhaul for some major mobile carriers. And I'll tell you, like they would call in and need a root cause analysis if they dropped like 10 packets on a spanning tree ring or something like that. So if now we're getting to the point where like, hey, like, oh, I came in and over the last hour, since all this telemetry is built in microseconds, there's been 12,000 events that have happened where things have moved and potentially loss of performance, etc. If people have to answer for that, then I think we definitely need some type of platforms that exist that can give that type of feedback in user readable form. Like I said, I don't know if this is the focus of this company whatsoever, but it just made me think about it. Like, we're really going to need that in terms of providing accountability, and just even being able to put it into kind of layman's terms about, what kind of events are happening.
That's a really good point. Yeah. Like, I mean, yeah, because if you have an SLA, you have a knock, or I don't even know what a knock would look like for that. I mean, it would just, because I mean, by the time a human can actually react to anything other than a catastrophic break, which is essentially like a rack lost power or cables got pulled or, something like that.
You have all the screens and they're just always red. They're permanently red.
Right. and what do you do? What is the corrective action that you can take within the time span that, again, unless it's a catastrophic event that actually requires hands to solve? Like, what are you doing? Like, so, yeah.
troubled waters afoot, I think. Yeah, but we will see. All right. Well, with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up. So thank you again for joining us for our monthly update on the news for the Cables to Clouds podcast. My name is Chris Miles at BGP Main on socials. Joining me was Tim McConaughey at Juan Gomez.
Juan Gomez, yeah. No, it's Juan Gomez on X.
You've got three different
Twitter,
monikers,
whatever.
so I don't know which one to. Call
I need to
you
collapse it all into one. Maybe I should just make a new one and collapse them all. I don't know.
Make it a fourth one. Collapse it all into a new one. Yeah, that'll be even better.
That's it.
So with that, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, please give us some feedback or share this with a friend. We would love to hear from you as well. And we will see you in 2 weeks with another episode. Goodbye.
Yep. See you.